Hello, 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 and welcome back to Strauss on Supply Chain. I'm the Strauss with 3ss.com. More about that at the end of the video. And I'm here today to talk about supply chain. More detailed, more precisely, supply chain for civilians. Anyone like me and the people I talk to who are in this topic for many years, day in, day out, when you try to explain it to family members or people you might meet at a party, you know that there's a huge chasm of knowledge about what we mean by supply chain. So this is going to be a series. There's definitely more than one video. This one's going to be very basic, a few concepts, and especially some individual words and terminology which we can drill into in future videos. And I'm going to start very simply with the question, what is supply chain? And already within that one, there is complexity, and there's actually more material than one video can hold. So this is episode 1 of episode 1. Hold on to your hats. So what is supply chain? If you ask some people who haven't been paying attention, they might say, oh, well, it's a chain that's inside the machine that makes toilet paper and it broke in the year 2020. That's why there was no toilet paper. Or maybe the chain is what this little tugboat here was using a couple of years later to try and unstick this particular evergreen cargo ship from the Suez Canal. Or it could be something to do with this particular ship. Maybe the anchor chain ripped and that's why the ship drifted into Baltimore Harbor. Yes, I'm being facetious, and it's interesting that very often when you talk about supply chain, it's about disruptions. It's when something goes wrong, because supply chains absolutely have one characteristic, is that they're invisible. A well-run supply chain is invisible. And the thing about it is, if you can see it, that's usually bad. That means that something's gone wrong. Now, I know I have severely dated myself with this cultural reference, but here we go. So any good research should start with a Wikipedia article. So let's look at Wikipedia's definition of supply chain and take that at a base. And it's wonderful because already here there are a number of terms where I would say, maybe, maybe not. So I can argue with Wikipedia on the internet and will give me content for multiple videos. Not going to go into that in depth, but definitely I would advise against conflating supply chain and logistics. Of course, the overlap is massive, but it does cause problems. The topic of conversion, there are things around there, definitely materials. Supply chains, the definitions which I will use are definitely about moving physical goods. People talk about the supply chain of data and software supply chain. Not it, right? When we're talking about supply chain, we are moving atoms around the place and we are doing things to those atoms. Definitely the concept of end consumers, but a lot of supply chain professionals will say, consumers too far out, customers definitely. So let's dive right in and see what this actually means and how we could represent this. With this, we would now go over, got to do it, switch over to the Straussatron. Let me get this right. Why is that not working? No, there we are. This is the Straussatron, which is actually a Mark 1 remarkable. So let's get started. We talked about the consumer, and that's quite convenient because that's you. And I'm going to put you on the right-hand side. So you are more or less a human being. You need things. I just realized I might have the wrong pen. Yes, I have the wrong pen. So yeah, that's you. That's the consumer. And you go into a shop, right? And you want to buy some, let's say, toilet paper. Let's stick with that example. That toilet paper comes from the nearest and biggest, or maybe furthest and cheapest toilet paper factory. And somehow gets to your shop. Furthermore, the toilet paper is made from multiple raw materials. There's definitely going to be water, a lot of water. There's going to be wood pulp and other wood pulp and paper pulp of that type. You could say there's going to be energy, but energy is not physical, so I'm going to say that's not really part of the supply chain. Sure, there's some chemicals and things like that, bleach. What you do need is packaging, right? If you're going to sell toilet paper, packaging is part of the equation, and those are the main things. Now, even here, we can already see certain patterns which we'll see elsewhere. Your shop where you live is not going to order toilet paper directly from the factory. In fact, if it's part of a chain, your shop's mother company will have their own distribution centers where they buy large quantities and send individual pallets into the shop. This could be run by yourself. If you look at it from the toilet paper factory side, they have something similar. They don't want to be dealing with 1,000 or 10,000 individual stores, right? And don't even want to deal with like a few dozen retailers. There's too many of them. Their job is to make toilet paper, and they're looking for people to buy it in the largest possible quantities to make their life easier. So you might actually have distributor, right? So let's say the largest American factory of toilet paper has 3 distributors, one for East Coast, one's for West Coast, and one's for the bit in the middle. And those distributors might then sell into the retailers, or they might sell into the distribution centers of the retailers, or they might sell to a lower level of distributor, also known as a reseller, something like that. So here we see automatically from a simple supply chain with 3 legs, there's all of a sudden these other people involved, and that's very normal in supply chain. The same is on the left-hand side of our equation. The trees aren't necessarily going, or the wood pulp isn't going to come straight from the forest. Supposedly, we are not chopping up trees just to make wood pulp. It's a byproduct. So somewhere out there'll be a sawmill which is chopping down these trees. That's supposed to be a circular saw, and maybe there is a pulp distributor or somebody who takes care of storing the pulp and preparing it and making it for you, and so on and so forth. So the same is on the left side of the equation, that here again you will have multiple little supply chain where stuff is not going from A to Z, it's going from A to B to D, C to D, and so on and so forth. To ensure that this video doesn't get too long, let's take a sharp corner and just add a few words around here, words which you will see in subsequent videos. What you will hear often is, of course, the term supply, right? And now I'm taking the perspective of our toilet paper manufacturer in the middle of this diagram. For him, the supply is what comes on the left. If I am thinking of you as the consumer on the right-hand side, well, the supply is actually the shop. But we're going to take the model of having the big toilet or the big factory in the middle who is worried about getting the right supply in from the left-hand side and serving the demand on the right-hand side. And depending on the behavior of the demand of the supply and of the factory, things can go well or sometimes not so well. Some terms which you'll hear on the right-hand side and which I mentioned, retail, right? So that's thought of as the last step before you get to real human beings and consumers. And remember, you as the consumer, you have a very important role in all of this, right? Your job is to destroy. Supply chain takes the stuff, creates the stuff, and it brings it to you. And you have to destroy it by eating it, smearing it on yourself, doing whatever you do with toilet paper, and then pulling the chain, not the supply chain. If it's a laptop or a cell phone, your job is to use it until it breaks and then to buy a new one so that the supply chain has a reason to keeping pushing more stuff in your direction. There are some absolute exceptions, and that's why I notice the difference between the consumer, that's us as a human being, and a customer. A customer could be a company, could be a factory. Well, their job is not to destroy whatever I deliver them, is to make the next product down the line. So slight nuance there. So anyway, we talk about retail. In front of retail, you would have distribution. Some people, especially if I'm again the manufacturer in the distribution, if I'm the manufacturer in the middle here, distribution is kind of all of that. It's everything between me and the consumer. For a professional, distribution might just be the thing between the factory and the last mile retailer. These are all things which you got to work around or think about, that people have these words and they use them differently. What more do we have on the right hand side? You hear fulfillment, right? In industrial terms, often you hear fulfillment, right? That's a term for what's happening on the right-hand side. I'm fulfilling orders, I'm fulfilling demand. And what, last but not least, you will hear is downstream, right? Again, from our factory in the middle, I'm going downstream towards my customer. Let's now look on the left-hand side and speed it up a bit. Yeah, you could call it upstream. And before anybody asks, no, the middle bit here here is not midstream, right? Except in the oil and gas industry, they actually use the term midstream. It's just not used anywhere else. It has some medical connotations, which I'm not going to get into right now. So I would advise against using it. We said it's the upstream on the left hand, it's supply. The process that's taking place is often called procurement. Next video about what is supply chain is supply chain procurement or is it logistics? You can play along at home until then if you wish. Sourcing is also a topic, and we can get into the difference. What do people mean by sourcing versus procurement? I think that's about enough for today. What do we hold? Well, supply chain moves materials. They move materials from left to right, or rather from the source to the point of production and to the point of destinations. Supply chains have multiple layers. Supply chains are also fractal, that within the layers you have mini supply chains, and that there's a lot of terminology which is used and misused, which leads to ambiguity and confusion. Very last thing I will say, especially for people who are closer to the business, if you look at documentation on the internet about this stuff, you will often see the diagram the other way around with the customer on the left and the supplier on the right. This is something that started happening, I want to say about 15 years ago in the industry, where we all became customer focused. So then it was the customer first. So we're going to put him on the left, but it's kind of counterintuitive if you come from a culture which reads from left to right, that the materials are moving from right to left. It's just a way of representing. You can also think that the materials are moving from left to right. The value and the money is moving from right to left. So if I pay If I pay $100 for my pallet of toilet paper, by the time I get to the raw materials, the cost might only be 10 because everybody is picking up margin along the way. So that could be called a value chain. So money going from right to left, value being created from right to left, goods going left to right, multiple and fractal. Let's go back to the main screen and go home. So hopefully you like this kind of content. I'll be doing many of these. Each one of those words on that screen is worth a 5 minutes or 1 hour dissertation, and I plan to do more and more. If you like this kind of content, give the video a like, do subscribe to the channel. Let's see if we can get to past 20 with this one. If you really like this kind of channel, go to my homepage, strausswith3ss.com, and subscribe to the newsletter. To date, I have never actually sent out a newsletter, but this gives me access directly to you, the audience, in case weird things happen with the major internet platforms like YouTube and LinkedIn, which are between me and you, the consumer. So it's kind of the supply chain of content. Oh, no, it isn't. All right, thanks a lot. It's been a blast. See you again soon.